Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I'll be covering the ice dance event at the 2024 NHK Trophy. This event was won by Madison Chalk and Evan Bates of the U.S. Strangely enough, this is actually their first win at NHK. They had not competed at this event until the 21-22 season, and they had 2 previous silver medals before finally winning here. Third time was the charm for them. It is also the 20th Grand Prix medal that they have won in their careers. They have 7 golds, 11 silvers, and 2 bronze medals. It's not including medals won at Grand Prix finals, just at the individual events. They did not compete in the 2013-2014 season, and of course they didn't compete in the COVID year. So pretty impressive career for them, obviously. But outside of the very beginning of their career, they have not finished lower than second at a Grand Prix event since 2013. They have had just an amazing amount of longevity, which brings up something I actually meant to bring up in the Skate America episode, and I forgot. Something I wanted to ask them about in the pre-Skate America press call, but unfortunately I was not able to make it to theirs. They are going for their 3rd world title in a row this season. And we have not seen a team win 3 world titles in a row in ice dance since Grishik and Platov did it in the late 90s, where they won 4 in a row. And that might sound like, oh no, there's no way, because ice dance is one of those disciplines where we tend to see a lot of the same teams win over a period of time. But we actually haven't had the type of consistency in ice dance that we may have thought. Now, obviously, Papadakis and Cizeron got the closest to that. They won 2 in a row before losing to Virtue and Moyer in the 2017 Worlds. And of course, they were derailed of an opportunity to get a three-peat after COVID. So they did not compete in the 2020 season. And then they did not compete either at the 2021 Worlds either. So they won 3 in a row that they entered in, but they did not win 3 titles in a row because Nitsina and Katsalapov won in 2021. So I bring this up that they're trying to do something that we have not seen in 30 years, basically, which is obviously going to be a very difficult thing for them to do. But I'm also really interested to see if they can pull it off. And I think it also gives a little bit of perspective for this team as well, because I feel like when you're an underdog, people tend to root for you more. Once you reach the top, then there's a lot more criticism, a lot more nitpicking. And so I feel like the same thing kind of happened to Hubble and Donahue a bit. And I've seen it now the last couple of seasons with Maddie and Evan. A lot of criticism. A lot of people think this team is better, that team is better. And of course, it's always going to be subjective to an extent. But I think it goes without saying that this team has improved incredibly over the past several years since they've been at the Ice Academy of Montreal. But they've also been able to sort of maintain a freshness about themselves, especially in these last 2 seasons. And I think that they should be applauded for that, whether you're a fan of the pair or fan of their programs or not. They are, potentially reaching possible GOAT status in a way if they're able to pull this off going into Worlds. Now, I'm sure if you ask them which they would rather have, another Worlds title or an Olympic title, of course they're going to pick the Olympic title. But if they're able to pull that off, you've got to imagine momentum is going to be heavily, heavily on their side going into an Olympic season. Now, they had a lot to prove at this event because they did not have a great outing, as we all know, at Skate America. So in this rhythm dance, they have made some changes to the music. They had 11 pieces of music in the rhythm dance at Skate America. And I think everyone agreed it was just way too much. I can't think of a single person, fan, media, anywhere that thought that 11 choices was a good idea. So they've gone down to 8, which is an improvement. So the first 3 songs are exactly the same, which I think works very well. I said that in the Skate America episode. What they have ditched is the 3 songs that were in the middle, the Madison, Watusi, and Nitty Gritty. And so they go from Rock Around the Clock now to Staying Alive, then Car Wash, Blame It on the Boogie, YMCA, and Last Dance. And when they finished this rhythm dance, I thought, okay, like that was a lot better than what it was at Skate America in terms of the overall fluidity of the performance. The only nitpick that I had from this one here was I thought that their character step, while it looks very difficult to do, it's a little slow. I think that is something that they can improve on over the season, because there were some aspects of their performance that I felt like were improved from Skate America to here. And I feel like the character step, that to me just sort of feels a bit slow, it's something that can also improve. And that's something that sometimes we will see with Evan and Maddie, that the speed isn't always quite there, especially with some of the more difficult sequences that they have in their programs. And then they get better by the time we get to nationals and to worlds. In the free dance, I was a fan of this when I saw it at Skate America. I'm still very much a fan. There's lots of little things that I really enjoy about this program. For instance, I like the little transition they do in their dance spin. They have a choreographic twizzle in their program, and so you can pick from any number of things. You see choreographic hydroblading movements, you see choreographic lifts, choreographic spinning moves, lots of different things. But all of the different choices, I feel like the choreographic twizzle is something we don't see as much of. Also is not something that I consider to be one of their better elements, but I really applaud them for picking that as one of the extra elements that they do, and not just sort of relying on their lifts that they do so well. They do begin and end with 2 very inventive lifts, which I think is smart because they're a strong point for that team. And so you sort of begin with a bang and end with a bang. And I just think that for all the criticism that they've received, that they have worked really hard the last 2 years to really improve their craft. Moving on to the second place team, that was Christina Carrera and Anthony Ponomarenko, also of the U.S. This was actually the first time that we have seen American teams go 1 and 2 outside of Skate America. So the first time we've had 2 ice dance teams get gold and get silver at one of the other 5 Grand Prix. So it's a huge win for Christine and Anthony. It is also their first Grand Prix medal of their careers. I thought in the rhythm dance, they just looked really strong, and there's oozing confidence. In fact, seeing them and Caroline and Michael go very close together, it was very obvious to me that Christine and Anthony are the much stronger team now. In the free dance, again, nitpick, is this really the best outfit that we can find for Anthony? It doesn't do anything to really flatter him. Maybe that's the point. They're just trying to get your eye to go to Christina even more. Again, it's a nitpick. The other little thing was I thought his free leg was a little low in the twizzles compared to where Christina was at. But I thought overall it was just a really incredibly strong performance. They got a personal best in both the rhythm dance and the free dance here. They got almost 80 in the rhythm dance and almost 120 in the free dance. And I thought that overall this was one of the better chances that U.S. had to go 1, 2, 3 in the medals, and they went 1, 2, and 4. So close. To me, right now, Christine and Anthony look very solidly in that number 2 spot. And the number 3 spot looks to me to be the one that's more up for grabs. In third place was Allison Reed and Saliusis Ambrulevicius of Lithuania. Their very quick turnaround from them having competed at France last week, and definitely not the result that they wanted, not being on the podium there. I thought their rhythm dance was much better than last week. Their free dance, I'm still a big fan of. I think the program is just so cool. There's a couple of things that they need to work on. There's a little delay getting into that first curve lift, and they need to smooth out that part. He actually got a level 4 on his diagonal step, which is huge. That increases your base value so much when you can get a rare level 4 on one of those step sequences. I think the beginning and the end of this program are really strong. It's the middle where the program loses it a little bit, and they'll need to work on getting that middle section up to the level that we have in the beginning and in the end. But I think for that real quick turnaround, they looked so much better this week than what they did in France. And I'm still a big fan of this puppet and puppet master program that they do. In fourth place here was Caroline Green and Michael Parsons of the US. Of all of the teams here, I felt like they had the most to prove, even more so than Maddie and Evan, who had a very disappointing second place finish, because Caroline and Michael's whole season last season was disappointing. And there was a lot riding on these two new programs for them to get themselves back into the conversation for a podium finish at nationals and get back on the world team. In the rhythm dance, they are using, these boots are made for walking, also along with some Austin Powers music that we also hear from Marjorie and Zach. They're very far apart on their twizzles, and I thought their lift, it was so slow in that program, which is always such an issue for them with their lifts. A lot of teams pick a rotational lift to do in the rhythm dance, so they don't choose to do that. They choose to do a curve lift instead. I don't love it, but hopefully it's something that they can improve on. We see them again in a couple of weeks at Cup of China. I'm not really sure that they can close the gap on Christina and Anthony, especially with the differences that they have in the rhythm dance right now. Their free dance, on the other hand, I really, really liked a lot. They're skating to music from Spiegel I'm Spiegel, which we also see Jason Brown use in his free skate, as well as start the piece with a piece of music called Dance Me to the End of Love. I thought they had a really nice one for turn sequence at the beginning of the program, even though it just got a level 2. The curve lift combo that they have is amazing. It's the best lifts I've ever seen them do in their career. Just a really, really cool moment. And I thought that this whole program, that Michael looks really good in this. After the rhythm dance, I was feeling like, and I think I had an exchange with somebody on X, that I feel like of the four, speaking of Christina, Anthony, Caroline, and Michael, that Michael looked to be the weakest of the four of them. And I feel like that's maybe the issue in what has happened, because I don't know that there's a big, huge difference between Caroline and Christina in terms of their skating skills. Right now, Christina's skating with a lot more confidence than Caroline is. But in terms of overall skating ability, I think they're fairly close. But right now, Anthony just looked so much better in the rhythm dance than Michael did. I was really starting to doubt whether Michael has regressed or what has happened. But in the free dance, it was like, it reminded me of, yes, this is the Michael that is so strong. And I want to see this version of him as far as the confidence and the ability to showcase his skills in the rhythm dance. And I think if they can get that back, then they can be back in the conversation. Because right now, they're going to be fighting for that third place position with Zingas and Kolesnik. Have a little bit higher scores in both of their programs than what we saw Caroline and Michael get here. And then also Brody and Somerville, who were coming off of a bronze medal finish last week. I think overall that Caroline and Michael can take it, especially with how much I like this free dance. I also really like Emilia and Vadim's free dance as well. And I think the fact that both of them have a more fresher free dance might get the nod over Brody and Somerville, but we all know at the end of the day, it's probably going to come down to levels and all of that jazz. But I was so encouraged by what I saw from them at this event. So very encouraged. In fifth place here was Loïcia Desmauget and Theo Lemercier of France. I thought both of their programs here were not at the level that we saw them at last season. In the rhythm dance, they're using Jackson 5, which I think is great. can't recall off the top of my head another team using Jackson 5. Their costumes, once again, make no sense. I mean, literally, they look like they're about to do something to like a Broadway musical. And I felt the same way last year when they were doing like 80s hip hop. The costumes make no sense. They make no sense again. This year, I'm just not connecting with this program right now. The second half feels a bit random and not as polished as the first half does. I think they've got a lot of work to do right now. The free dance is to various pieces of music. Akram Khan's Giselle, Bleeding Souls, something from Flesh and Bone. Very different, interesting pieces of music. The things that I do like their choreographic sliding movement. I think they have such a great glide across the ice in their diagonal step. I think they have a really cool rotational lift. But overall, it just didn't come together for me. This is probably a program that by Europeans I might feel completely different about. But right now, it just doesn't gel together quite well. They were quite behind where I would have expected them to be. I would have expected them to be much closer to the four teams that were ahead of them just based on the momentum that they had last season. So we'll see if they're able to improve when they come out again and if this free dance is able to come together a little bit more. In sixth place here was crowd favorite of Orihara and Pirinen of Finland. Their rhythm dance, so fun. Start Disco Inferno. Of course, I love the village people that they do also. The big issue for them here was they got a base level on their pattern step, which they have their performance down. They have performance in spades more than maybe anybody else in ice dance right now. What kills them is the technical elements in their routine, especially the step sequences. And that's something that they're going to have to improve on if they're going to get beyond this middle of the pack that they always find themselves in. In the free dance, Yuka has a new costume, which thank goodness I did not love what she wore in their previous Grand Prix. It looked kind of like a crop top with a ballet skirt. It didn't make any sense to me. So this one was at least an improvement. And also, did she have leg warmers before? Like she had something over her boots to kind of mimic leg warmers. I just thought that this costume looked a lot better than what they previously had. Their character step in this is absolutely my favorite. It is so fun. I almost wish they could have props so they could have a hat. They actually, I don't know if it was on Instagram where they put like them actually doing the character sequence with the hat, like before they debuted this program at one of the challengers. Yuka is such a bright light just throughout. I think the circular step to I Need This Job is probably the weakest part of the program for me. I think the lifts are the real highlight. I would like for it to come together just a little bit more and also for them to work on that technical piece a little bit. But I'm always just supremely entertained. In seventh place here was Jans van Rensburg and Stefan from Germany. In the rhythm dance, they came out to Boogie Shoes, which made me immediately think of Yaroslav Paniot from the US. He has used that for short program music, I believe. Super fun. I actually kind of liked her costume a bit because I feel like this season, even more so than last season, like the costumes just keep getting smaller and smaller. Like we're seeing more and more of people's backs and their bellies, and look, they're all in great shape. Like flaunt what you got. I have no issue with that, but it's just kind of nice to see something that, you know, had a little bit more material for a change. She's in kind of a jumpsuit. I know not everybody loved it, but I appreciated having something a little bit different to work with. Like the rotational lift that they do, it looks like she fell out of her twizzle at the end of the midline step. She just ended up with a level 1, and they did get some negative GOE from some of the judges. They ended up with positive GOE, but only 0.15. In the free dance, They are skating to Fantasia, which is basically just various instrumental pieces of music from the Phantom of the Opera. It's a different style for them. I think it's fine. It's got some nice moments, but I just feel like we've seen better Phantom programs. Now, I will give them this. At least they are using a different piece of music with the piano pieces than using some of the big pieces that we've heard so many times. Because I think Ice Dance is probably where we have seen Phantom of the Opera used more than any other discipline. It just it just kind of fell a little bit flat for me, but I'll see what I feel like when I see it again. In eighth place was Du Paillage and Nabai of France. Better here than they were last week in their home country, though they had great speed on the first and their third twizzles in the rhythm dance, not so much in the second set, but I did feel like they were more confident and had better presentation than what they had last week. Their free dance is just got some really cool moments. Again, kind of like the rhythm dance, I felt like overall it was just a little bit better than it was last week, and that helped them to stay above the two Japanese teams here who were 9th and 10th. In 9th place was Yoshida and Marita. In the rhythm dance, they have some of my favorite costumes, like the polka dotted dress. He's got a just positively authentic blue blazer for him. Great music choices. They ended up getting an extended lift deduction, but love that routine. It's just, again, so fun. A lot of these rhythm dances for a lot of the ice dance teams have just been, they've just fallen very flat for me. Maybe just because I get sick of disco so quickly, and we've had a lot of disco this season. And so when a team comes out and does like 50s or 60s, I'm a little bit more excited. But I just feel like their personalities just really shine in this piece. In their free dance, they're skating to Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet. I've loved this since the very first time I saw it early in the season. And frankly, I thought their scores for this performance were just too low. They're always a real highlight for me. And then in 10th place was Tanaka and Nishiyama. In their rhythm dance, they're skating to music from the 70s. I was really impressed with the midline step sequence. Their first two songs actually are from the 70s, and they're dressed for the 70s, but then their last song is actually from the 60s. Again, nitpick. I get it. I kind of like it when they stay in one decade. It just feels like it flows a little bit better that way. But anyway, like I said, minor nitpick, but it's a fun routine. They, like Yoshida and Marita, had an extended lift deduction. And then in their free dance, they were skating to Fear Elise. You can really see the nice fundamentals that they have. Like when they came out in the rhythm dance, I was like, they look like an IM team. They are an IM team. They were another team like Maddie and Evan that had a choreographic twizzle in their free skate. So really enjoyed them. So really top to bottom, fantastic event. No big major mistakes, no crazy ordinals for ice dance this week to sort of balance out the chaos that we had last week. All right, so for my Pam Chinko Award, I'm going to give it to Green and Parsons for their free dance. I think we haven't seen them skate like this probably since World 2022, and it was so nice to see them really skate to their potential. This piece is choreographed by John Luke Baker, and it looks like a really good match for them, and perhaps they'll keep him around for their programs for next season. Let's take a look at the Grand Prix final standings. So with their win here combined with their silver medal at Skate America, Madison and Evan are also headed to the Grand Prix final to join Lopareva and Brazil. Reed and Ambrula Vicious are next in the standings with 20 points, which is likely not to hold up with a third and a fourth place finish. So the next teams are really the teams that we're kind of expecting to go there. Gillis and Poirier, Bear and Gibson, who have wins. And then Guinard and Fabry, who, even though they're behind Lejoie and Lagat and Carrera and Ponomarenko, because of their overall total score, they're likely to win, I would think, at their next Grand Prix. So that would leave one spot left for either Lejoie and Lagat or Carrera and Ponomarenko. You would think Lejeune and Legas, but it is possible. They are actually going to go head to head with each other at Cup of China for what will likely be that last Grand Prix final slot. Let's say that Christine and Anthony are able to get the silver there. Then with 2 silver medals and Lejeune and Legas getting the bronze, they would get the nod and vice versa. I'd put my money on Lejeune and Legas just because they definitely have the higher scoring potential that we have seen so far. But who knows? We've also seen mistakes. They had a fall in the rhythm dance at Skate Canada, and they've also had some issues in the past, whereas Christine and Anthony have really avoided disaster, knock on wood. Maybe it'll be really close, who knows, but they've got a chance to get into the final, even though, like I said, I likely would expect that to go to Marjorie and Zach. Next week at Finlandia Trophy, we've got Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier, the Tashlers, Ori Hart and Pirinen, who are going back-to-back, will be in their home country along with their country mates Turkula and Vers-Lewis. Fear and Gibson will be here. Lemon Kwan from Korea, Pinchuk and Pogorelov from Ukraine, and then 3 America teams: Browns, Peyton Bai, and Zingas and Kolesnik. The top 2 spots are easy: Gillis and Poirier, Fear and Gibson. The third spot is interesting because we've got the Tashlers, Turkula and Vers-Lewis, and we've got Zingas and Kolesnik. In the past, you definitely would have Turkula and Vers-Lewis here in this spot, but they have really struggled since they won the bronze medal at Europeans back in 2023. We just haven't seen them at that form. They've really struggled with a lot of step sequences, getting levels on lifts at times, twizzles, a lot of times very different things. They have a very strong free dance. They're doing a tango. I think that their ceiling, again, is higher than the Tashlers and the Zingas and Kolesnik, but we just haven't seen them really skate up to their potential. So this could be a fantastic opportunity for both the Tashlers to get on the podium here, or for Zingas and Kolesnik to be able to match what we saw Brody and Somerville do last week in France. If I'm going to pick, boy, that's tough. I feel like the team that is better in the rhythm dance, I don't have confidence enough in Emilia and Vadim. They're just like almost there. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all for Emilia and Vadim to be in bronze medal position after the rhythm dance. But what are we going to see from them in the free dance? The Tashlers, I feel exactly the opposite. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see the Tashlers put a great free dance together, but they could also probably likely to be 5th after the rhythm dance. So I'll just say Turkula and Vers-Lewis just to have a prediction out there. But I expect this to be pretty hotly contested, and hopefully I'm not disappointed in that. That concludes my coverage for the ice dance event. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You can find me on all the socials. I know a lot of you have been leaving X due to recent events, so I have increased my presence on Threads, and I have joined Blue Sky. Same handle, at iSkate Podcast, if you're on any of those platforms. And of course, I'll still be on X and Instagram. I'll be back with more recaps. In the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your week.